I don't think anyone can ever be 100% ready to face a tornado. Sure, we can build stronger houses, dig basements, and warn people in advance. But at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of these giant destructive whirls of madness. The subtle good news is we, at the very least, can prepare for these monsters, especially since tornadoes usually form in very specific regions and drop off warnings before they touch down. The bad news, though, is that tornadoes don't always form where we expect them to. Worst, not all of them drop hints of arrival in advance. That's exactly what happened in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1999. In this capital city, where tornadoes had barely touched down in recorded history, an isolated EF2 tornado formed from scratch in just several minutes, causing millions of dollars in damage, injuring 80 people, and claiming a life during its violent 14-minute rampage. It's not an exaggeration to say that the Salt Lake City tornado in 1999 is the most unexpected tornado in modern history. August 11th, 1999. This was the D-Day of the most infamous Utah tornado that would be remembered by the state for decades. But that morning, just hours before the tornado touched down, there were absolutely no signs that anything disastrous was about to happen. At least, not to the naked eye. The skies were cloudy, but just regular rainy day cloudy. Not that eerie, greenish kind of sky that people usually describe before a tornado. No one would have guessed that by 12:41 p.m., a tornado would touch down and tear through hundreds of buildings, injure dozens of people, and knock out power across most of Salt Lake City's downtown. $170 million worth of properties gone on a random Wednesday. If we're talking about the meteorological side of things, though, yeah. There were definitely some signs that something was brewing in the skies. But there's a reason why those signs were left unnoticed. It's the simple fact that this is Utah, one of the least tornado-prone places in the entire country. The whole state averages maybe 2 tornadoes a year, and almost all of them are EF0 or EF1. For context, a tornado that weak might rip off a few roof tiles or knock down fences and trees. It's not going to lift cars or level buildings. Nothing too dramatic. Plus, these minor twisters rarely ever happened in Salt Lake City itself. For that reason, the lower atmosphere over the metropolitan area wasn't exactly being watched all that closely by anyone at the time. Sure, the FAA had just installed a terminal Doppler weather radar in Layton to help monitor wind hazards for flights. But that system wasn't yet fully integrated into public tornado warning operations. Because honestly, why would it be? Tornadoes don't happen here anyway, right? Turns out, they do. And without proper radar or tornado detecting systems in place, everyone was completely blindsided by what was quietly brewing overhead. But what exactly was building up in the skies anyway? How was it possible for a supercell to form and a tornado to touch down within just 5 or 6 minutes? Let's talk about the science of it all. Don't worry, I'm not going to drag this out like some boring high school lecture. Here's a quick bite-sized tornado lesson to help you understand why this tornado was so mind-bending when it happened. For a tornado to form, very specific conditions have to come together. Meteorologists usually look for these 4 key ingredients. First, moisture. Warm, humid air hugging the ground. It doesn't matter if it's from a lake or the ocean. or if it's drifting in from somewhere else. Moisture becomes the main fuel for storms. Second, instability. That's when the warm, moist air near the ground wants to rise. But there's cooler, drier air sitting above it. That clash makes the atmosphere unstable. Hence the name. Put moisture and instability together, and you've got the setup for some serious thunderstorms. But for those storms to actually form, you need lift. Something to force that unstable air upward. That can come from cold fronts, shifting air masses, or even mountain winds. In Utah, that day of August 11th, 1999, the lift came from a dry cold front sliding in from the northwest. And finally, the fourth ingredient: wind shear. Winds blowing at different speeds or angles at different heights. That's what makes the whole thing spin. No spin, no tornado. Just regular thunderstorms with heavy rain or maybe some hail, but no swirling monster. Now, here's the deal. In places like Kansas or Mississippi, all of these ingredients show up together all the time. That's why they get hammered with tornadoes every spring. The reason why events like the 2011 super outbreak were possible in the first place. But in Utah, Salt Lake City, one or two of these ingredients are usually missing. Maybe you'll get moisture from the Great Salt Lake. Maybe instability on a hot summer day. But real lift, and especially wind shear, rare. Very rare. That's why tornadoes here almost never happen. The ingredients don't usually show up all at once. Except on August 11th, 1999, they did. That morning, forecasters detected moisture, instability, and lift, enough for thunderstorms to be expected by night. But what they didn't realize was that the fourth ingredient, wind shear, was also creeping in. Cool, dry air was moving in from the northwest. Warm, moist air from the lake was flowing in from the south. That opposing flow created just enough wind shear to set the bad weather already brewing on an unexpected spin. By noon, that ordinary storm had turned into a rotating supercell, cutting straight through the heart of downtown Salt Lake City as an EF2 tornado. Thunderstorms surrounding the Salt Lake Valley had begun forming rapidly. There was one over the Oquirrhs in the Harriman area, and another over the south end of the Great Salt Lake, and one over the northern portion of the Salt Lake Valley. Salt Lake City itself was feeling the humid winds and ominous clouds of these growing storms. It was around this time that an eerie greenish tint began to creep across the sky. 12:41 p.m. The tornado touched down in the southwestern part of Salt Lake City. At first, it was weak, barely causing any real damage. It was just an F0 tornado with winds around 40 to 70 miles per hour. But it ramped up so fast that by 12:45 p.m., it had grown into an F2 tornado with winds between 113 and 157 miles per hour. That's when it started to tear through everything in its path as it barreled straight toward downtown Salt Lake City. It carved a path starting near 600 South and I-15, cutting northeast right through downtown, about 4.5 miles in just 14 minutes. By the time it finally lifted, it had left behind $170 million in damage. A building that once housed a busy bar, along with a cluster of nearby small businesses, were the first to be hit by the tornado. One staff member from one of those establishments recalled the horror of the events the day after the disaster. He, along with co-workers and delivery drivers, rushed to hide in the walk-in cooler. The building around them fell apart, but fortunately, they all survived. The tornado continued toward the Delta Center, a major venue for large events. The building was sturdy enough to hold up, but it didn't escape unscathed. Windows were shattered, and parts of the roof were torn apart. From here on, the tornado only got stronger. Worst of all, it was heading straight for a venue hosting an outdoor retailers convention, where hundreds of people gathered under canopies. Massive temporary structures had been put up to accommodate the crowds. And as the smoke-looking mysterious twister approached, these temporary canopies collapsed on top of people, burying hundreds under heavy debris and shards of glass. This was where Alan Crandy, the lone fatality of this Utah tornado, tragically lost his life. He was from Las Vegas but had traveled to Utah to help with the convention. After tearing through the event and injuring dozens of people, the tornado continued to trample northeast. It toppled a massive crane, damaged cars, and destroyed homes. Temple Square and the Assembly Hall were hit directly, causing costly damage. People ran for cover. Cars stopped in the middle of the road. Trailers were flipped like papers. Hundreds of trees were ripped out by the tornado, especially in Memory Grove Park. The damage there alone would later cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in cleanup and repairs. Unfortunately, just a couple of minutes before it lifted, the tornado unleashed even more destruction. It headed straight for the avenues, a quiet residential neighborhood. Families huddled underneath whatever shelter they could find, fearing for their lives as their roofs were torn off and their furniture was hurled through the air like toys. Hundreds of homes were damaged. 34 were hit so badly that they were left uninhabitable. As the tornado caused all of this destruction, sky cams across the city were capturing its terrifying display in real time. People with handheld cameras recorded balls of fire along the tornado's path. The exact moments when power transformers exploded as they were toppled by the winds. It's hard to imagine the terror Salt Lake City residents felt during that disaster, especially since most of them had never seen a tornado prior to this tragedy, let alone one of this size. By 12:55 p.m., after the tornado finally lifted, news crews scrambled to cover the unfolding disaster. And people were only just beginning to process what had happened. Near the convention center alone, 49 people were rushed to nearby hospitals. Dozens of others were injured in other parts of the city, too. Some were in such critical condition that paramedics had to treat them on the spot. There simply was no time to get them to a hospital. Those who were lucky enough to escape unscathed or with minor injuries recalled the moments they encountered the tornado's wrath firsthand. Some had no choice but to grab the nearest tree and hold on for their life. Others sustained head injuries.
I didn't have time to get inside. I kind of dove in the corner back here. I was out on the patio and the roof came down on me.
This driver explained how he felt inside his truck. And this man summed up what most people were probably thinking that moment the tornado approached.
Certainly looks like it could have been a tornado, but it was something I've never seen before.
While interviews were being conducted, on the other side of the disaster zone, rescuers were desperately trying to save people trapped underneath the rubble of collapsed buildings and fallen trees. Firefighters, paramedics, and volunteers were running everywhere with stretchers, medical kits, and prayers. As tragic as it was, however, city officials could only breathe a sigh of relief once they saw the full picture. After all, considering the damage to structures, the fact that there was only one fatality and relatively few severe injuries was almost miraculous. It was perhaps the best-case scenario anyone could have hoped for in a disaster of this magnitude.
This has really, in many ways, been a miracle that we have been extremely lucky. This could have been so much worse.
But of course, not everyone could share that sense of relief. Unlike many in the downtown area who suffered only temporary damage or minor injuries, families living up in the avenues saw their entire neighborhood and memories torn apart in seconds.
It's hard because I grew up in the house, and it's just hard to see that all your memories are gone now.
What used to be loving homes were reduced to ruins in just minutes. Neighborhoods were filled with tears as families tried to salvage whatever was left of their furniture and lives. Since the EF2 tornado in 1999, Utah hasn't seen another tornado disaster quite on that scale. Yes, there have been other EF2 twisters in the years that followed, like the one in Manti in 2002, and another in Indian Canyon in 2022. But both of those hit more rural, remote areas. And both times, warnings were issued before the twisters even touched down. That's because ever since that wake-up call in 1999, Utah has become much better prepared for severe weather. The National Weather Service's WSR-88D Doppler radar at Promontory Point now plays a key role in monitoring storms across northern Utah. And the FAA's Terminal Doppler weather radar in Layton, which originally focused on airport safety, is now fully integrated into the warning network, specifically tuned to catch hazardous wind patterns over the Salt Lake Valley. If there's one lesson that 1999 made painfully clear, it's none other than the fact that even Utah, which was once thought to be safe from extreme twisters, is never truly 100% protected from nature's extremes. That said, if a tornado were to knock on your city's door tomorrow, would you be prepared? Drop your thoughts below and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next disaster story we cover.